Take the boy and go hide in the loft.
I'm here to collect Mr. Hawthorne's rent! Shut that please! Before I get you open the Christ almighty!
Johnny Fletcher busted into a farmhouse on property.
You bring me back that stuff to false.
Well, look what we have here. Please don't kill me.
Gentleman John Fletcher! Damn it!
Johnny Fletcher! Don't make me chase you!
I didn't kill nobody. I didn't murder that family.
That don't break me down to me. We're bounty hunters. We're a wanted man. Here.
Out of the night that covers me, black is the pit from pole to pole. I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeoning of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade. And yet the menace of the years finds, and shall find me, unafraid. It matters not how straight the gates, how charged the punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
Stand down and no one has to die today. This only ends one way. They'll kill you all. Why not take your chances in a prison cell? Alright, I'm coming out.
My lord, I have a report.
Speak.
Our latest assassination attempt on Lady Nocturne has failed.
I can see stronger measures are needed. Begin phase 2.
Captured! The notorious Lady Nocturne has been brought in through the valiant efforts of the Void Cobras.
Get on the damn person.
Prisoner, take 5 steps, then stop and turn to your right.
But the pirates of Velix Mortis are far from defeated.
My lord, I have a report.
Let's cut to the chase, since we both know that this isn't a social call and you didn't come here to waste time.
Fine. High Command is gambling that the attempt on your life by your so-called friends has made you willing to cooperate. Am I wasting my time now?
What fate will befall the disgraced former pirate?
The Minotaur sends his regards, traitor.
What does your High Command want, and what are they offering in return?
High Command wants many things, but it wants a show of good faith first.
Bravo 2, give us support.
What next for now infamous mercenaries, the Void Cobras?
I want every last pirate I used to run with dead. I don't want to be watching over my shoulder every hour of every day.
Now you die!
Will the Void Cobras become targets of Lady Nocturne's former pirate comrades?
Attention, crash override. This is Freighter Ebony Hawk. My ship just lost all power and thrust. We're going down. Mayday, mayday, mayday.
There truly is no honor among thieves. You rabble will turn on each other at the slightest provocation.
Okay, fine. Moving past you.
Find out on the next episode of Star Citizen Nocturne.
Jameson, you copy?
Touch me now, I don't want to live without you. Nothing's gonna change my love for you.
Jameson, we require immediate emergency extract.
I don't know, man. It looks kind of hot over there.
Oh, I've entrusted my life to idiots.
Okay, got it working, Sarge.
Alright, Corporal. Good work. Follow me! Y'all remember what Sarge said? Stay together, keep comms clear, and heads on the swivel. Clear. Okay, we're gonna secure the van, sweep the entire ship for survivors. Channel, you take point. Doc, you're behind me. Corporal, you're bringing up the rear.
Understood, Sergeant.
Taking slack. Oh shit, I just saw something.
god, oh my god!
Get the hell out of here!
Get him off me, get him off me, get him off me! They're getting in my armor! Ah!
I got into collecting bounties when a gang of bandits bushwhacked my wife, my best friend Coyote, and me. Meet the Jones brothers.
Take a look at the situation in which you find yourself.
That's Joshua.
Can have real bad.
What's the Indian word for
Next to him is Rufus the Doofus.
Heck, I don't know. You're just trying to make me look dumb.
All right, I want to
Next
see
to him is
on the
Lyman.
ground.
Remember those faces.
And 6.
You'll see him again.
8 hands praising Jesus.
The other ones, well, ain't no use in introducing. They're all dead.
Run!
Obadiah, get the saddlebags!
I later discovered the Jones brothers were all wanted men. Figured I might as well get paid for taking my revenge.
Man, we still want it for justice. Post is still on the wall?
So I hunted down the ones we didn't kill. Lyman, he sang like a bird. Rufus and Joshua were smuggling contraband down the river. Always to the same spot. I found a nice perch on a bluff above the river where I knew they would eventually be. During the war, I was a sharpshooter. Coyote's Whitworth came in handy. For weeks, I tracked them. Then I killed them.
If you like our content, we'd appreciate if you'd like, subscribe, and get notifications. Help us extend our reach by sharing our video content. And if you want to help us beat the algorithm, also leave us a comment on some of our videos. Nathan from Election Truth Alliance back on the show again. How are you doing, Nathan?
I am I'm good. It's felt like, I don't know, it's been a few weeks now. It's felt like a few days and it's felt like a few years. So I'm very happy to be back.
Feel that. Glad to have you back. So
as is, you know, as is my nature, I have a PowerPoint. But this
you
time
were
around,
you were an MI officer, right?
No, signal communications, radio, satellite, all that fun stuff.
Okay.
But this time I kind of took this PowerPoint. I already talked about some of this stuff a little earlier today. I was on Mark Thompson's show, but I kind of kept this big picture for you. So what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about a few things, but first and foremost, the big picture is going to be we're able to now start estimating numbers, right? Potential votes. And excuse me, if we do that, as I'm sure some people are going to ask, if there was manipulation in the 2024 presidential election and we're able to estimate how many votes could have been manipulated, is it enough to change the outcome of the presidential race? So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And I think we keep this super simple. I'm going to keep it, you know, very big picture, ask questions, jump in, you know, whatnot. And there's all kinds of stuff we could talk about. So, you know, anything else?
Well, I'm by myself tonight. Everybody was like, fuck, we scared them away, huh? Nah, they've all got real life stuff going on. So,
well, great. So you could ask all the little questions then. I think I don't exactly remember what we talked about last time. Do you? I think maybe, was it Pennsylvania?
We talked about a wide range of things. The thing that I took away from that most was something that you said about, like, if we can just get one case to go to court, it can break the door wide open.
Well,
and now Rockland County.
And that is in our PowerPoint, actually. That's one of the first things we'll talk about. We'll kind of dive into it, smart elections and their work as well. So, all right, we'll start this off pretty simple. Stop me at any point if you see some good questions in the chat. I already see a lot of good questions, but little introduction. So if you're not familiar with who I am, and thank you so much for having me again. My name is Nathan. Excuse me. I'm one of the co-founders of the Election Truth Alliance. There were 3 of us. It's me, Lily, and Jive. We all have different backgrounds. Lily's in political science. I'm in, you know, cybersecurity, information systems, data analysis, and Jive's in, you know, statistics, finance, and all kinds of awesome stuff. So we got together to make this organization, the Election Truth Alliance, a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization just after the election. Why? Because we saw a lot of momentum leading up to the election, saw a lot of, you know, record levels of engagement and endorsement in the election for candidate Harris in this case. But then after election night, we saw some very interesting concerns, some things that didn't add up, right? The math wasn't mathing, if you will. And so that kind of led me, Jive, Lily, and then other volunteers to get together and start actually digging into how are our elections being conducted? Are they actually free and fair as we are being told? And, here we are 5 months later doing these reports and talking about the actual math, the actual data. So we'll make it super simple. Hello.
Hi.
And then, yeah.
I was
I'm sorry,
hasty in my assessment that I was going to be the sole host tonight. So thank you.
I thought I'd
Lo,
try to get
for
on at
joining
least for a little bit. I'm in Wyoming. I don't know that it's very cliche to say I don't know about the Wi-Fi, but I really don't.
All right. Well, I mean, if you want to do a little introduction and then we can kind of jump in. I think I covered all my things. I think I'm ready.
Okay. Well, I had requested that you come because I've been seeing all of this about the issue in Rockland County, New York, and these undervotes, and there's lawsuits involving those and supposed updates that the software had received before the election, which makes it, of course, sound really fishy. But I think we're all really reluctant to be those kinds of conspiracy theorists that we had, castigated about 2020.
Yeah, that's a hurdle that we've kind of struggled with in the beginning. Is the last 4 years has really made talking about elections taboo. It's really made this conversation tough. Really, the way we've been successful is we talk about the data, we talk about the facts. We talk about my background and, it's not about politics. It's not about left or right. It's about making sure our democracy works correctly. And that right. As I like to say, this is kind of my new thing I push for is a government, for the people. And so if you don't have the consent of the governed, right? You go back to the Sons of Liberty and the foundations of, all the fun times. It's all about making sure people's voices are heard. Representation is done right. So if our democracy isn't so free and fair, that is a big deal. So we'll jump in here. You already covered this. You already talked about this a little bit. You've probably seen this before. If you've not seen this map before, all this is all of the state. This is all of the United States. This is every state. And this is actually, you can see little counties in here. And what this is showing is, as you mentioned with the Rockland County case, concerns about the machines we use. And so I will highlight, there are two major brands that span 70% of the U.S. These brands have both voting machines where you vote on, but they also have vote counting machines, which count up the votes. And what's important here is we're worried about the machines that count your votes. Do you recall a certain quote from someone at the pre-inauguration rally? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
So a certain someone said on his pre-inauguration rally night, he talked about how a certain tech billionaire knows those vote counting computers, and they won Pennsylvania like in a landslide. And so I will highlight the major brand used across the U.S., the ones that may have modems in them, the ones used in Rockland County were used all throughout Pennsylvania and North Carolina. And we'll actually talk a little bit about that too as well. But what this slide is really highlighting is that 70% of the machines we use to count our votes all across the U.S., there has been a couple different concerns raised by Free Speech for People back in 2024. I'm talking about how bad faith actors could have potentially gotten access to the systems, to the images of the machines, to the administrative codes. We don't know. But what we do know is if you were to mess with these machines, if you were to compromise them in some way, you could potentially change the outcome of a presidential election because they are used well throughout the U.S. So we're going to jump into the last part, which we'll talk about North Carolina as well. I've got that, Pennsylvania and Rockland County. And this circle is showing that number one brand, 93 out of 100 counties use that number one brand, the brand with cellular modems in some of their tabulators. They use that in North Carolina. And here we go. So this is what you wanted to know. This is what everyone's really asking about recently. Rockland County, New York. So if you're familiar, if you're not familiar, smart legislation, which is it's the like legal action arm of smart elections. They are suing Rockland County. Why? Because they have sworn affidavits, meaning voters who voted in Rockland County said, hey, I voted this way and my vote was not counted. And it's not showing up, but they're voting for third-party candidates. So they have a bunch of sworn affidavits from third-party voters that don't show up in these precincts in Rockland County. And that's their like legal standing, is they're saying their votes are not being counted correctly. Something's going on. And then, what else they're highlighting is they're highlighting that across the county, across these precincts, candidate Harris, in this case, is getting a large amount of votes or getting less votes than the Senate candidates. It's causing a very strange drop-off is what that is. And so that a lot of their work is showing that drop-off, showing these affidavits. And they did have that lawsuit hearing initially. They actually were granted discovery, meaning they didn't get dismissed in court, which is important. That's the second step. So this court case is proceeding based on what they have found. And so the next hearing is in September, the 22nd. So they have discovery now. They are asking for documents. And then their ultimate ask is they want to actually inspect the physical ballots in New York. So in Rockland County. Any questions or any concerns about this? Anything else I'll cover? I have one more little slide on this. I'll show you a little bit what they're talking about when it comes to the drop-off visually. But that's the big pictures. They're saying that the numbers don't add up. Something's going on.
It's a fishy undercount.
Undercount is a really good word, yes. An undercount for Harris all across the county. And what's important, the reason why we highlight this, is we are seeing that same undercount, not just in New York, not just in, these states. We're seeing it all across the swing states. We're seeing it in North Carolina. We're seeing it in Pennsylvania. We're seeing it in some of these other swing states that we haven't talked about yet, like Arizona, and even a little bit in Wisconsin. So if this is caused by a compromise of the tabulation machines, for example, I'll actually show you what that could look like, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But here's their next portion. Here's what they provided the court. This is a statistical graph. I was going to reproduce this, but didn't have the time yet. All this is showing, they have a few lines here, and I did cut this off a little bit, but this is one of the towns in Rockland County. And what they're showing is this bottom blue line is the amount of votes Harris is getting on average. And so the left axis is the percentage of votes. So 0% is the amount of votes the senator is getting for both candidates. So if you're above the line, you got more votes. If you're below the line, you got less. And what they're just highlighting here is Harris is consistently getting less votes than the senator all throughout the town and then the county as a whole. This is one of the 4 towns that they actually looked at. So we have similar graphs, a little bit more visually clear graphs for some of these other places. But this is kind of what they were showing is, hey, she is coming in under all across this area. So I'll talk a little bit about how does this connect to other places, right? Well, we're going to talk about Pennsylvania and North Carolina real quick. We'll keep this very high level. I'll give you numbers. I'll give you hard numbers. So we are seeing that same anomaly, right? That down ballot difference, that drop off, the less votes, right? Underperformance for Harris. We're seeing it in North Carolina and Pennsylvania. And so we did a little bit of math just at a glance. And for example, in North Carolina, Harris got 122,000 less votes than their superintendent race. Superintendent. So you're telling me the president got less votes than the superintendent did. And so we did actually look at past elections and non-swing state elections. What does normal look like for a president? Generally speaking, presidents get like 1% to 2% more votes than all these other down ballot races. Why? Because the president is probably one of the most popular positions to run in. So even in 2016, Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, she was still getting 1% to 2% more votes all across the U.S. So we're going to show you a little bit about what does this look like, and then we actually do have some hard statistics and some data. So here, I'll let you guys kind of look at this. I'll explain it, and then I'll start asking you guys questions. I know there's a test. So What this is showing,
I'm gonna automatically fail. Just
no. I'll give you the answers. I'll give you the answers, and then you just gotta.
That's not a test.
Well, I like to give tests that people can actually pass. So think of it as a check on learning, if you're familiar. So, yeah. So North Carolina, all across the counties. So what this graph shows, let me explain it, is your bottom axis, your x-axis, the bottom axis. Those are counties. So each county in North Carolina. And so for each county, there is a blue and a orange-red line. And so the blue line is the Democrats. How did they perform? And the red line is the Republicans. And so we're doing a comparison here. We're looking at the presidential race, how many votes they got, and then we're comparing it to the zero line. So there is a zero line right here in kind of the middle. And so the zero line is the amount of votes each candidate's superintendent got. So if you got more votes than your superintendent, you're going to be above that zero line. If you got less votes, you're going to be below that zero line. You guys tracking? All right. So what does this look like to you at a glance? Do you see anything like crazy? Do you see a lot of negatives here? Or where are both candidates generally at? They're generally speaking, they're pretty chaotic, but they're both generally above the line on average, right? You don't see a lot of negatives here. So both candidates, and this is 2016. This is Hillary Clinton. This is Donald Trump. So I like to show this because this is saying, if this is what a normal election looks like for a state, and this is North Carolina, we're seeing both candidates.
Like 28 counties.
Yep. We're seeing something like that. We're seeing about both candidates are sitting pretty heavily above the 0%. They're getting more votes than their superintendent. It's chaotic, though. It's not exactly the same all across the counties. But this is what we would say, this is reflective of normal voting behavior. I say all of this, and we don't see a lot of negatives here. There's only a few, but it's not that much. I say all this, and I'm going to show you 2024. So we're going to look at 2016 one more time. It's chaotic. Most of them are above the line. This is what we would say is a baseline. Now we're going to show you 2024. I'll just let you look at this for a second.
Wait, what?
Yep. This is North Carolina.
Excuse me?
Yep. All right. So explain to me what we're seeing here.
Well, there's tons of negative. It's hanging all below.
There's tons of negative.
A thing that I like to call fuckery. There is.
Yeah,
I have this
big.
See,
I have this thing
important?
called the tree of fuckery, and there are varying branches on the tree, ranging from the bottom branch, which is like fuckery, all
Are we at the
way up
top?
to like heinous fuckery most foul.
Yeah.
Or heinous motherfuckery most foul.
What's even sketchier here, if you will, is we only see negatives for the Democrats in this case, but there is not a single county in North Carolina for the 2024 presidential election where Harris got more votes than her superintendent. Not a single county in the entire state. And we see this pattern not just in North Carolina. We see this pattern all across the swing states. And she's showing it to other people now. So what could cause this, right? What is this? So here's the thing. As we talked about before, we are concerned at the ETA, Election Truth Alliance, we are concerned that if there was a compromise of the tabulation machines, if you were to start deleting and or switching votes for a candidate, it would create this effect, which is that negative performance compared to the down ballot races. A superintendent should not be more popular than a presidential candidate all across the state. It's not probable. It's not real. Humans don't vote this way. And as I said, we have the same thing for Pennsylvania as well. On the left is 2024 for their mail-in voting. Mail-in voting, which we find is far more normal. On the right is 24, all of Pennsylvania election day. And we're seeing that same huge amount of underperformance. This is the Senate race, so president versus the Senate, but it's the same thing. We're seeing this in these swing states. We're seeing this in Arizona. We're seeing this in Wisconsin. We're even seeing this in non-swing states like Texas. So we said, what if this is caused by manipulation? let's dive a little deeper. Let's estimate how many votes this is, and let's do some more math. And so to set that up for you, we did actually reach out to an individual. I don't know if I talked about this last time. This is some pretty new stuff if you're familiar.
Yep.
But Dr. Walter Mebane. So originally we reached out to him. We said, hey, we have we've done analysis of the 2024 presidential election. We are concerned. And so this gentleman here, he is, in my opinion, one of the leading U.S. election fraud experts in the country, if not the world. He works at the University of Michigan, Department of Statistics and Political Science. He has been held up by USAID before they got kind of doged, if you will, for his work in detecting election fraud. Yeah, doged is a verb now. So he's talked about past elections. He's talked in like 2019. They used him for, I think, a Bolivian general election where they were like, hey, there may be election fraud. So he's probably one of the most well-respected data and election fraud experts we've found yet. And so we asked him to do an analysis based on his work, his models that he's made. And he did. He analyzed 3 counties in Pennsylvania that we gave him in the beginning. But there's more. We actually asked him to look at all of Pennsylvania. And so we have numbers now. So we asked him to use his advanced form of election fraud detection. It's called eForensics. And we did it for North Carolina. And he's published his work now. So he's published a paper for Pennsylvania, all of the counties in the state. And he's also provided us with a North Carolina report that's not been made public yet. We're talking about it now. We'll put it up when we release our report here in a week or two for North Carolina, but we have the hard numbers for you. So let's talk about Pennsylvania. So his work here at the bottom, Pennsylvania, he found up to 210,000 anomalous votes that could be caused by vote manipulation. The state margin of victory for Pennsylvania was around 120,000 votes. So if that higher range, 210,000 votes, was caused by a compromise of the tabulation machines in Pennsylvania, not including the 200 plus bomb threats, right, that we talked about last time, I think, over 30 bomb threats in Pennsylvania alone on election night. So that's enough to change the outcome of Pennsylvania if those are malicious votes. And so we did the same for North Carolina. So he found up to 207,000 or so anomalous votes. And he also said he likes to put them in categories. So Dr. Walter Mebane also said around 102,000 are a high confidence of being potentially manipulated or malevolent votes. That means he's pretty confident at least 102,000 of them could be caused by someone changing things. But he does estimate up to 207,000 in total look suspicious. The margin of victory in North Carolina is around 184,000 votes. So if that higher end is right, that would be enough to change the outcome of North Carolina as well. So we got Pennsylvania, we've got North Carolina. The question then is, where else could this be happening? I'll stop there. I'll let you guys ask questions or kind of process.
I have a couple that I've already kind of
let's go for it.
On the back end. It's called starring it or whatever. So the first one is from Jessica via the Facebook stream. This case is already further than the Trump election fraud cases in 2020, correct?
Yeah, the Rockland County case is it's there. So I think there was 64 plus lawsuits in 2020, 2022. They never had their day in court. They got dismissed. There was only a handful that actually went anywhere. And even then they had nothing compared to what New York, the Rockland County case has. Rockland County case has sworn affidavits from voters saying that their votes weren't counted and a clear representation that they weren't digitally counted at least. And then they have that pretty strong statistical analysis saying, hey, this is a pattern all across the county. So yeah, they're already light years ahead of what happened the last time around, if you will.
Okay. And
I will highlight the ETA, we're kind of gearing up for maybe some action of our own here soon. I won't give too many details, but I will say that hypothetically, if there were some counties in Pennsylvania, perhaps, that, signed a sworn certification of some voting machines, and then it turns out that during records requests that not only did they, say they did it and they, signed and swore they certified them, but then there's some emails they actually say, no, we didn't do this. We should do this next time. And they used voting machines that weren't actually, checked and certified. That would be some pretty strong information to use in upcoming actions. So there are things like that out there. It's becoming more known because everyone's starting to dig into this. Everyone's starting to ask these questions. Yeah. Other questions?
Yeah. So the next one is from Victor, also via the Facebook stream. There's like several questions in there, but the ones that I want to focus on are there any actual investigations of this? And is counting paper ballots the only way to get to the bottom of it?
As far as I know right now, there is no government investigations. There's no state investigations. The only investigations that are being done by third parties, such as Smart Elections, such as us, so far. And then you asked, is there any other way? Well, I think it's a great question. When it comes down to proof, there's really only a few ways to prove it, and that's to find manipulation. Whether it's like the physical votes not matching what we're told are the results, or finding other evidence or proof that the machines were compromised. So it's really hard to probably find proof that the machines were compromised unless you have like a whistleblower or you get your hands on the code or something like that. That's hard to do. It's far easier to go and actually just recount the physical votes in places where we're raising flags, because hopefully those physical votes are the same votes people actually cast. So if there was votes changed around, the machines change votes around, then the physical votes should still be correct, generally speaking.
Now, before I move this along, you mentioned getting access to the code. That can be subpoenaed, right? And didn't we have that in the 2020 elections when they're like, oh, the machines were rigged or whatever, and then somebody ended up like posting the code online or some shit like that?
I think there were some lawsuits that did make it to that point where they got access to the machines, I believe, and the operating system, the image of the machines. I don't know if that got leaked online or not, but that was something actually raised by Free Speech for People in that cybersecurity letter that they put out. They had like a group of cybersecurity experts saying, hey, we're worried about the machines being compromised because of those lawsuits, because those machines, those images, I think did get taken and could have got, leaked. I think the problem here, or what we're saying is a little different, is we're more worried that the machines themselves should be running normally. The systems, the images should be normal. And then we're worried that someone is putting something on those machines, malware or whatever, in addition. And it's changing how those machines should be counting the votes. That would be one of the easiest ways to pull this off, to compromise the machines and change the outcome, is while the tabulation machines are counting the votes, you just accidentally miscount 5%. And then that's enough to actually change the outcome of some of these races. It's 5% or less. That's how close some of our elections are. So that's what we're more concerned about. The problem there is if there is malware that was put on the machines in some way, or they were compromised, however you could do it, we're not exactly sure yet if it did happen and how you would have done it. But if you did, it's likely that if you've got the means to pull that off, you're going to cover your tracks. You're not going to leave logs. You're not going to leave records. It's going to get deleted, by whatever it is you've put on those machines. So that's why I like the physical ballots better. It's clear proof. And then we can kind of sit down and look at everything else and, work our way through it.
Could they get
I've got another
to the updates?
That's
what the allegation was that the machines had received non-critical, non-minor updates, so they weren't reviewed.
So
they weren't reviewed
I am
by
familiar
anyone because they were minor. So could they that could be something they could subpoena? Is what exactly were these updates in the days before the election?
Yes. So I am familiar with exactly what you're talking about. Some of that was highlighted by Smart Elections. They're talking about, for example, software updates that were pushed by the companies themselves to their machines. And when that happens is there are auditing companies that are supposed to kind of look at those updates and determine, are these updates a big deal or not? And if they're not a big deal, there doesn't need to be another audit of the machines or verification of the machines. It's called de minimis. And so, yes, you're raising that concern. Smart Elections raises this concern. A lot of other people are looking into this. It does seem that there were some updates sent out to the major tabulation brands prior to the election day or the election voting period. And these updates were labeled as de minimis, meaning they didn't warrant actual scrutiny. They didn't warrant, a test of those updates. So yeah, if you were to compromise those updates somehow, and the largest tabulation brand in the country that we use in North Carolina, in Pennsylvania, in Rockland County, some of their tabulation machines do have, or we believe they have, modems in them, cellular modems. So it's so that they can upload the results to the county servers faster. But anything that has connection, cellular modem could be compromised as well. So I am worried.
It could go both ways in theory.
It could go both ways. And yes, we can figure out what were those updates. What did they include in these updates? And that would be something subject to investigation as well. If we find that those updates may have allowed a compromise of the machines, there's an avenue, right? And no one checked, right? Because they weren't labeled as an important update. So.
Next question before we get to that. Everybody give the channel a like or a follow and a subscribe where appropriate, and also upvote the stream, please. And feel free to shit up the comments. Just don't shit it up too bad. Need the algorithm. And also, Nathan's website is electiontruthalliance.org. I took the URL down to work on some of the comments. So make sure you all bookmark the website and go follow them on all their socials, etc.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I asked this question myself on the last stream. If we can prove it, then what's next?
Yeah, I have this conversation almost every time we talk about this. I've actually reached out to counties and briefed county level officials, Board of Elections, things like that about these concerns. And it's the same question of, hey, if this is real, what can we do? I will say a few things before I explain kind of what we should be pushing for. A lot of the responses we get is they're saying, hey, talking about this and saying if the machines are compromised or the elections are being messed with, it makes people not want to vote. And I think that's the wrong answer. I think if anything, we should be more engaged going forward. We should be paying more attention going forward, because if there is a compromise of our machines, this time around, no one was ready, right? No one was watching. No one was sitting there ready to do the numbers and figure out where to look. But next time around, if everyone's aware, if everyone's worried, and we all go out and we vote for whoever we want, then it's far easier to get those recounts and those audits within those windows. And that was the problem this time around, is by the time anyone raised concerns, it was well outside of the audit or the recount window. Like the officials who lost, had only a few days to really contest things. So I think that's what's important as well. And as you said, what can we do now? Well, what we can do now is what we're already doing. First is, let's talk about this. Let's make this public information. Let's keep digging. Rockland County, New York is one step. Let's start actually investigating, and where we have evidence, suing. And that's what we're working on. That's what Rockland County, New York's lawsuit is about. So we want people to know. We want people aware. We want people asking questions and putting pressure on the state governments to look into this. And then, as you said, let's say we prove it. Let's say we get our lawsuits. Let's say we get our evidence, and we prove that the machines are, for whatever reason, that the results don't match. The machines are giving us different answers than the physical votes. Then it comes down to the next steps. Well, if we're confident it was enough to change the outcome of the presidential race, that's when you're looking at state and federal lawsuits. You're looking at campaigns. So firstly for us, I would definitely, there's a lot of civil rights groups, and there's a lot of far more connected, higher level government groups that I feel like if we can prove this happened, they're willing to come to the table. They're willing to start pushing back. I don't have the answers though, right? It's not like we're going to immediately be like, hey, the election was fraudulent and you're going to install the rightful winner or not, right? That's a big step. I think we start small. Let's prove it. Did it happen? Did it not? And then we go from there. Then we start working with the states, the governors. They have a lot of power. I think that's the thing I'll kind of conclude this question on is people don't understand how much power each state individually has. The governors, it's so if all the governors are on the same page, we're 50 states in a trench coat, if you will. We're 50 countries in a trench coat. And so
not wrong.
The federal government has as much power as the states give them. And that's the whole thing is if the states run their elections, they can do what they want for the midterms. If the machines are compromised and we prove it and we work with the states can figure it out. They can make the next, the midterms more secure. And then, you're looking at the whole legal action of, have you ever decertified a presidential election before? That's never happened in American history before. Does that mean it's impossible? There's only one way to find out.
There's lots of
We've
things.
never
that have been
had an
happening
insurrection
have never
that stormed the
happened
state
before.
capitol.
Yep, there's a first time for everything, it seems. So, but I will say this. Let's not worry about how difficult it would be. Because at the end of the day, all we can do is try. All we can do is push forward and adapt as it comes. And that's the thing is everyone's like, hey, this is an impossible task. Look how far we've come. It's been 5 months. At the beginning of this, when I started talking about these concerns, I was laughed at. And they're like, hey, you're crazy. And then here we are, 5 months in, 6 months in, there's lawsuits, there's real questions. So all we can do is keep pushing.
I think that
There you
the
go.
Democrats are in a lot of disarray right now, and a lot of them really wanted to run away from the idea that they just kind of went, okay, lost, moving on, because they were so married to this, we can't look like we're just sore losers. We
Right.
don't want to be conspiracy theorists. But that's got them hamstrung right now, because I think there's a lot of infighting about lots of stupid stuff instead of focusing on what's really important in the short term and in the long term. So it's been coming up with this stuff on at a ground, on the ground level, kind
Grassroots, yeah.
of grassroots, and moving it up is maybe it's going to catch some attention that they can't ignore.
Now, I will say we're very confident that a lot of our concerns and work has actually made it across the desks of people in Congress, people in state governments positions. And I'll say, I think really where the Democrats, for example, struggle when it comes to talking about this publicly is the Democrats spent the last 2-4 years saying, hey, our elections are free and fair. There's no way that this could happen. And then I think now we're starting to find out that the evidence and the data doesn't really support that. There's a lot of concern. There's a lot, and it sucks. And I think that's one of the major hurdles to people talking about this is, you kind of dug a hole for the last few years. But I will say, I think we're starting to see some people push back a little bit and talk about it. I think it'll become more approachable as we get into the lawsuits, as we get into, collecting this evidence, and hard facts is really what it will take.
And it is important to point out that this has gone further than Trump's stuff, because that stuff got shut down in multiple jurisdictions because there wasn't anything to it. There wasn't material evidence. So that's how that happens. It isn't, their argument would be that it's the distraction, that it's because there's liberal judges or something. You know what I mean? Like they will say that, they will argue that, but it is based on, evidence that you can say this is going farther for a reason, because there is actual smoke here.
And well, the fun thing is we just want audits. We just want recounts. We just want to look at the paper ballots.
Right.
There's it's not like we're wanting to storm the Capitol. It's not like we're wanting to, all we want is we want to look at the physical ballots in places where we're concerned. And then, we'll,
do you
we'll
think that, it's one thing for there to be, it's in swing states, it's swing, potentially critical districts within a swing state, but that you find it in like Rockland County, New York, which is like, that just seems like a stupid place to call attention to yourself.
Well, as we'll show you yet again, our concern now is, sorry, dogs are going crazy in the background. You asked the question, if you were going to mess with the machines and change the races, why wouldn't you focus on places that you need to win, right? Why would you go big? Why would you go to places that are never going to change? Well, that's interesting because we're seeing now almost everywhere these machines are being used, we're finding these same patterns, even in non-swing states, even in places such as
Signal that
California.
it's maybe related to those updates, that it went sort of like system-wide rather than just targeted places.
It could be. Yeah. And that's the concern is we're seeing a global shift all across the U.S. This is one thing that comes up a lot as people talk about the data. They talk about how poorly the Democrats did all across the U.S. this time around. And that's what's interesting is we're seeing that underperformance for the Democrats all across the U.S. in places that these machines were used. So I do find it interesting. I don't truly know why you would do that. And I feel like you would be worried about showing your hand, but we're finding the data shows the same concerns. We're seeing it.
But you also wouldn't just come out and say stupid shit about it either. Before,
well,
you wouldn't just necessarily say, I know a guy who's, knows those machines back and up and down,
Yeah, it is a little strange talking about vote counting computers. That's a very specific thing to talk about. I don't normally in my day-to-day life talk about vote counting computers.
Just come out with it spontaneously.
Yeah, just But I think we'll kind of talk a little bit then about. Let me show you some quick visuals, and then I'll kind of wrap up in the last little bit, and then any more questions or whatever. So here's your last little bit of visuals. Here's a little bit more data. When you talk about those lawsuits in 2020, 2022. I looked at some of the statistics that were held up then. Here's real numbers. Here's real math. So what we're going to show you is this is a heat map analysis. This is based off the work of Peter Klimek. He is an Austrian physicist in Europe, renowned for his election forensics analysis. He's looked at Russian elections. He's found concerns in Russian elections and other elections as well. So this is his work. Here's his heat maps. The way you read these heat maps is each of these is a little election. And so what we're going to highlight is a normal election based on his work should look more like a circle. And so he likes to highlight Russian elections in like 2011, 2012, where they look more like a comet trail, right? There's an up and to the right. And these are all little voting locations or precincts or counties, depending on what type you're looking at. So you shouldn't see a comet trail. If you see that comet trail, that might be indication of vote manipulation. And so we actually have done this for counties in the U.S. We've done this for Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and we're going to show that to you real quick. And you may have seen some of this stuff before, but we'll throw in the North Carolina. So we're going to start with some baselines first. So we got two little baselines for you. This is what we say is more normal. So we have an Ohio nonpartisan race. This is their state board District 5. And the way you read this is the bottom axis is turnout. So we're showing every precinct in a county where 0% of the voters showed up to 100% of the voters. And we're seeing, are there any changes in precincts where more people showed up? Is it benefiting one candidate? So that's all this heat map is showing is we're seeing a circle. That's normal. So we see the nonpartisan race looks pretty good here. There's a circle. Now we're going to show you mail-in for Erie County, Pennsylvania. Remember when we looked at the drop-off maps earlier, the graphics, mail-in almost always looks more normal, looks more like a 2016 election. So here's the same thing. We see a bit more of that circle, more normal looking election. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing. So here's your mail-in. It's a circle. Now I'm gonna show you Erie County. If you've seen this before, I'm gonna show you Erie County. And remember what we talked about. So a circle looks more normal. We're expecting to see that. Abnormal looks more like these comet trails as seen on the right with Russia, or even Uganda's got some really interesting stuff where a lot of their precincts are shifted up. But nonetheless, we're looking for a circle. So now we're going to show you election day for Pennsylvania for Erie County. And then I'll just let you look at it for a second.
Oh.
Okay, so what are we seeing here? Does this look like a circle?
Some weird stuff.
What are your thoughts?
Weird and elongated.
Right. What's interesting here is instead of a comet trail, like in Russian elections, we're seeing almost the opposite. We're seeing a rocket. We're seeing almost all of the precincts are shifting up and to the right, which is up and to the right generally means ballot stuffing or like a weird mix of switching votes and deleting votes, something like that. So we're seeing this across Erie County. We're also seeing this all across Pennsylvania. And then we see this as well across North Carolina counties, as we talked about before, where Dr. Walter Mebane estimated the amount of votes. So here's your visual representation of that potential vote manipulation. Same concern here. This is Mecklenburg, Charlotte, in North Carolina. Same concern where instead of that circle, we're seeing a majority of precincts being shifted up and to the right. And in this case, this is the presidential races, so they're benefiting Trump. We're seeing a strange benefit to Trump. And then here's all of North Carolina, the last one for these heat maps. And so there's your reverse comet trail, if you will. We're seeing a huge amount of precincts shifted. So we highlight all of this because what we're saying is the concern of if there is vote manipulation going on in our elections, if the tabulators are compromised, these effects, these visuals would support that argument. We're seeing what matches vote manipulation or a type of vote manipulation seen in other countries like European countries. And I did put numbers down here at the bottom. So this amount of manipulation in North Carolina as a whole, that's roughly 197,000 votes being changed. So that's your little visual summary. And here's the last part. Here's your big picture, your takeaway. You asked, why would you, or if you were to change things across the board, not just in the swing states, what would that look like? Well, we're just going to look at the swing states. We're just going to talk about all the data we have right now that we're showing. And as we talked about, I think at the beginning, if our tabulators are compromised and 70% of the US uses these tabulators, and we can estimate where the manipulation is happening, can we estimate how many votes? Would it be enough to change the presidential outcome? So we already talked about Pennsylvania. We already talked about North Carolina. We said if the anomalies we've picked up and the work of Dr. Walter Mebane is right, it would be enough votes to change the outcome of Pennsylvania and North Carolina at the presidential level. We've done the same. We're seeing the same patterns in Arizona and Wisconsin, and we've done the same math. And so in Arizona, we are seeing that around 119,000 votes could be manipulated there. That's enough to change the outcome to Harris in Arizona. In Wisconsin, far closer race. We're seeing closer to around 20,000 or so votes that could have been changed. And that is still enough to change the outcome of Wisconsin. So if Pennsylvania, if North Carolina, if Arizona, and if Wisconsin, just those were changed, and Nevada, which we have some data on as well, that would be enough to put Harris at, I think, 288 electoral votes, enough to change the outcome. I will highlight, those are just some of the states that we're seeing problems in. There are non-swing states that we're still doing math for. We're seeing Texas. We're seeing some issues in Florida now. And we're actually seeing, just recently, I think we highlighted this as well, to our surprise, we saw around 88,000 anomalous votes in Minnesota. Even though the Democrats won Minnesota up and down the ballot, we're still finding anomalies that means votes could have been changed around, just not enough to change the outcome. So I kind of summarize this up. If the tabulation machines are being messed with, the data and the statistics we've done would show this was enough to potentially change the outcome of the presidential election for the 2024 election. It also means if we don't look at this and we don't investigate and we don't validate, are the machines potentially compromised, the next elections are on the chopping block too. The midterms are on the chopping block. The next presidential is on the chopping block. And this won't go away. Yeah. If these machines aren't just going to get swapped out, right? These machines will be used until they get replaced. And that is our concern. All right. I think we're done with the PowerPoint, and then we'll just have questions. We can probably take this off now. And then any questions, any follow-ups, I'm here for that. There we go. All right.
We had some good questions earlier. I thought those were really pertinent questions. Do they got any more?
Apparently I got my mic muted. Sorry.
I think I saw some questions already. They were asking us they were asking us about down ballot races. So remember how like in Rockland County, and we showed you in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, there's that drop off from the presidential race to the down ballot races. Although there is that noticeable difference, we're also finding manipulation in the Senate races for some of these states. We're seeing some of those pop up. I think Minnesota as an example, 88,000 potentially manipulated votes at the presidential level, but we're looking at like 70,000 for the Senate race. It wasn't enough to change the outcome in Minnesota, but we are seeing almost all partisan races in Pennsylvania are showing similar concerns. It's just not as much at the presidential level. There's still that noticeable gap, which makes us wonder what would cause that gap, even though both races are potentially being manipulated. That would mean that however you've done it, whatever algorithm or malware you have on these machines, they're manipulating a little bit more for the presidential race, 2 to 3% more for the presidential race. And that's very interesting. We're starting to see that pattern show up. All right, questions? You're stunned. You're silenced. Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
There we go. So this little Chiron thing, whatever, I have to go in and like select the thing. So it also helps if you guys are cruising through the chat to look for things that you want to address too.
It is a really good question. So they're asking if it says they're like, yeah, this sure raises concerns, but why didn't they rig the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, right? The Supreme Judge. Why didn't they rig the new mayor in North New York, right? I think I'm not going to try and pronounce his last name, but
that was actually the Democratic primary for that.
That was the primary. Gotcha. Yep.
Yeah. He's not the mayor yet.
Not
talk
yet.
About that later.
But good question, right? Why would you not keep your thumb on the scale? And that's a question that we don't really have the answers to yet. But I will highlight that it's risky to pull this off. It's risky to do. If you're manipulating things, it's pretty risky, and you don't want to get caught. And so the question is, what is beneficial of doing this at like the presidential race when there's so much pressure to get things done and counted and get it, closed versus a lower race where, the state and the county could maybe take some more time to review and assess. And I think, I don't really know, but I do know we are looking a little bit more into the Wisconsin Supreme Court races and to see if there's anything weird there. But I don't know. Maybe there is a concern of, hey, we don't want to do this all the time because we could get caught and then the gig is up. Or there may be other questions. It may be hard to do it. It may require very specific timing. It may require updates. It may require, putting things on machines and you don't want to get caught. So you really only do it when it matters most. We don't know.
Well, he made Elon mad, so now Elon can't help him.
I do find that interesting. We don't really talk about the specifics too much on that, but it's a very interesting situation.
I saw a thing that said that they had reignited their feud, and essentially now
I saw that today too.
I need to preface this. These people who were formerly on the opposite side that are now all of a sudden like the anti-heroes, they're not your allies. Adam Kinzinger, still conservative. Liz Cheney, still conservative. They are a temporary ally. Never forget that these people voted for legislation that harms the people that we care about, period. So when I say this next thing, you need to temper that. I'm helping you manage your expectations in advance because I'm a Sarge explain it to you. Elon Musk has threatened to fund with as much money as he can primary challenges against anybody, Republican or Democrat, who votes for this shit when it goes back to the House for reconciliation. That is potentially good news for everybody in the country, not just Republicans or Democrats, but he's not your friend. Don't fucking forget that. Stay the fucking course. Now, having said that, because he said this, all of a sudden, his former butt buddy, Donald Trump, I can't say butt buddy anymore, I'm gonna get canceled. His former buddy, Donald Trump, is like, well, we're gonna look into deporting Elon Musk, which I personally I would support that because I've said that shit 1,000 fucking times. And just because sun shines on a dog's ass once a day doesn't mean suddenly he's my buddy. But it's gonna get heated. So he's somebody's gonna fuck around and find out on either side of that equation. It'd be interesting to see what happens. Now, I personally would love to see them try to deport that motherfucker because he's got the most money out of everybody in the world. So
he's trying to
how's that
buy
gonna
up
play
South
out?
Texas.
Is he? Yeah, is he gonna?
He's buying all
Is he
kinds
gonna
of
turn
land
around and
down
be like,
there.
you know
He
what
owns a
happened?
bunch of land down
Want to know
there.
what I did? Try to deport me. I'm gonna tell him what I did.
I mean, as we talked about before, there are some interesting quotes. There are some very direct quotes. So there are concerns, as you said, whether it's funding opposition in upcoming elections or whatever. It's going to be very interesting to see. I think there were some like election integrity concerns kind of coming out recently about any oversight for elections. So that's something we'll keep an eye on as well. I did see one other question someone was asking about Michigan, one of the swing states. We haven't really talked about Michigan. We did do a little bit of analysis on Michigan as well. We only looked at 5 counties so far out of the entire state, but at a glance, we were seeing something like 65,000 anomalous votes in Michigan. So as I said, we've not really sat down and done all of that. I think the margin of victory in Michigan was around 80,000 votes for Trump. So 5 counties, 65,000 or so votes. We'll do some more data and we'll put that up as well. Michigan was very interesting. So, but yeah, I'll take if we got any more like big picture questions or anything else. If not, I kind of wrap up and let you guys do your thing. What's this one?
So how can I check my personal vote to see how it was actually counted? Now the day the results, like when everybody woke up and was like, oh no, I very specifically I went on, I don't remember if it was a live stream or a video, whatever, but I said,
you went to Facebook, didn't you?
Go have your votes checked. Go make sure your vote was counted. So how can people check that?
Some states don't have a way. Some states won't like track voting information. Some states do. I don't know. It depends on what state you're in. But if there is a way to track it, I think it's through either your county or your state's like vote tracking. I know mail-in, they could do this. So there's a lot of people who were going and tracking their mail-in votes for their state. And that's actually something we've kind of circled back around because there was so many mail-in voting, like millions of mail-in voters who their votes never got counted. Their votes never got delivered. So we actually have some people out there right now who are trying to get people to fill out information, fill out forms and like say, hey, yeah, my vote never counted. I mailed in my voting and start like trying to document that as data's. But I think you can look at either your county or your state websites. Generally, it's through a website. You can go and you can look up your voting information, see if your vote was counted or not. But some states don't track that at all. Some states are like, oh, we don't believe in, retaining personal information. It's against the law. So it's very interesting to see how each state does it differently.
Just on a personal note, McArony is a very good Scottish name. One of the best clans, McArony.
All right. Yep, there's our website. I'll kind of close out then on what's next, right? Like what's new, what's more. So I will say what the Election Truth Alliance, we up on our website, electiontruthalliance.org, we have a little dashboard where we're putting up this data. And that's the important thing from what happened the last time around. They're like, hey, we have evidence, but then you never really got to play with the data. We're giving you the data. So we've got Nevada's data up on our website right now. We've got 3 counties in Pennsylvania. We're going to get the rest of Pennsylvania up there, and we're going to put North Carolina up there as well. So you guys can go and do, if you care to, or if you have the background to, you can do the same analysis we're doing. You can look, do the same stuff. And then, what's next, right? So New York, Rockland County, Smart Elections is doing their lawsuit. I think, as I said, what the ETA is looking at doing now is obviously we're going to keep putting out new reports. We're going to, do every state that we can, every swing state, and go from there. But we're looking at trying to step into direct legal action in Pennsylvania. So we've been working on that. We've got, some legal experts. We've got, some plaintiffs. And we're just now trying to figure out the last piece, which is what is going to be a solid argument in the court of law, right? We have statistical evidence, but the last time someone tries to use statistical evidence in a lawsuit, it didn't go so well. So we need more. And that's what we've been collecting and gathering. And we are building to start that. Hopefully here soon. I don't have an exact date, but I've been pushing on this pretty heavily for the last little bit.
Can you make recommendations for securing the process? Is that something that you feel qualified to speak on?
So I am not, a expert election auditor, but I will say some things to better protect our elections going forward, things that we or our allies will push as well, just to make sure our elections are free and fair in the future. Once we, if we prove election fraud, it's still things we're going to do. Is one, a lot of the audits that the states do, they're only like a 2% or so audit. What you want to do is you want to do kind of what we're doing, which is do a statistical analysis of your election, find discrepancies, find anomalies, and then go and audit those anomalies. And that's where you're going to find, was there fraud or not? It's the same thing when you think about like money fraud, right? Like, what do? They have ways of detecting money fraud, financial fraud, and then they go and they look. Same thing for us is our current audit system in the US is we're like, all right, we have this room full of marbles. And so what we're going to do is everyone's going to grab 2 marbles out of the room, the ones closest to the door, perhaps, and then let's make sure they're right. And that's how we detect fraud in the US. And it makes no sense because if there's fraud, it's not going to be easy to reach. It's not going to be the first things you pull. It's going to be in the back.
Is anyone here currently defrauding things? Please raise your hand.
Yeah. So that's the problem, is we're not doing a good job, in my opinion. We need to be applying the work of Dr. Walter Mebane to look at our elections and then spot check and do 100% recounts, 100% audits of those places that just don't make sense. And that's how you'll find election fraud if it's happening. Same election fraud techniques. Good point. Good little segue then is if you're paying attention to the news, I think Poland for their presidential race, 2025 presidential race in Poland. Same problem with them. They're finding potential election fraud in their race. And they're finding, they did a little bit of a recount. They actually did. They're like, let's recount a few of these locations. I think they already recounted 9 or 10 different spots, and they're finding the reports don't match the physical votes in those places. We're going to dive into that a little bit more, but I do think what's important is people think the U.S. is infallible. We think our democracy and our elections are perfect. I think that's a really easy. There's an old IT saying there's 2 types of companies. There's companies that have been hacked, and there's companies that don't know they've been hacked. So, yeah, I feel like we're starting to sit in that second part where we're like, hey, nothing to see here. What are we afraid of? Let's go look. So
I totally agree.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm sorry I'm going to have to jump, but I really appreciate you coming again, Nathan. I'm going to make sure all of my mom friends who were asking questions watch this recording if they weren't able to do it live and marvel at your data and be excited about what this lawsuit might hold, that it's moving forward.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks
for listening.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
So another question with lots of emojis.
Yeah.
And all caps. Did Trump's lawyers not have a copy of the voting software from a court case?
Let me double check, but I believe they're referencing a lawsuit against Dominion voting machines, where I do believe, and I'll double check, that they may have got their hands on the image for those Dominion voting machines. So yeah, that would have been a side effect of a court case. Let me double check that real quick while you grab another question.
Let's see. I'm not taking every single question, chat. There's like 160 some odd of you and one of
It's good there's questions at least.
Yeah. There was a question about how to get on Discord. I have a whole ass video. Not just a video, but there's also a website now. You can go to Liberty 1765 and get that. So that's how you get on Discord.
To answer the original question, it does look like in January of 2021, right after the 2020 election, Lawyers allied with the Trump campaign did potentially gain physical access to Dominion voting systems. And they were apparently allowed to copy hard drives and system images before law enforcement could stop them. So this, I think this is referenced in that letter I talk about with Free Speech for People, where it talks about like 70% of the voting systems in the US could be compromised. Yeah, they got a copy, apparently.
Okay. And if you got a copy of it, then you potentially have access to the source code, or at least you have the ability to.
Well, so the way we, for whatever reason, the way our machines are run in the US is we, for some reason, believe in a black box of voting, right? Our machines are secret and you can't know how they work. And I think the problem is that's called, I can't remember the exact terms, but it's something by obscurity. It's so obscure that hackers couldn't figure it out. And I think that's, I'll be honest, I think that's stupid. And I think it's stupid with my background in cybersecurity and information systems, because if you are wanting to cheat and mess with these systems, they're not obscure to you. You're going to get access to those systems, figure out how they work, and come up with ways to do it. So that's why there's such a push right now for open source systems. Why? Because anyone can figure out how they work and anyone can check to see if there's something malicious in them. So I think that's one of the problems is we're like, hey, our systems are secure. They're so secure, no one knows how they work. But then we just talked about a compromise of the systems. People know how they work. They know. And what's important is if I get a copy of something, if I get a copy of a system, a tabulation system, for example, I now have that copy. I can sandbox it. I can run tests on it. I can figure out how exactly it works, how I can compromise it, any weaknesses, any flaws or vulnerabilities, and then I can write my own code and then potentially use that code to, change or mess with the machines going forward. That's how hackers work. They figure out how something runs and they compromise it.
And a lot of times, social engineering is the best, easiest, and fastest way to get it. And for those that don't know, social engineering is essentially as simple as picking up the phone and being like, hey, this is Dave down at the office of IT something.
I'm your computer.
And sorry, excuse me, I got something in my throat. Anyway, I've lost my credentials and I need to reboot my browser. Cleared the cache the other night. Big thing. Monday maintenance. So could you send that to me in an email real fast, just so I have the ability? Because I gotta upload this thing real fast. Social engineering, bam.
Yep, people are the weakest link when it comes to security. And so what I did civilian side before I really jumped into doing election integrity stuff, I worked for a real-time network monitoring company
a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, so I actually used to go to companies and try and break in and do penetration and social engineering. So my favorite was being the bug spray guy. And I would show up, I would have a clipboard, I would have a little can of, or I'd like a little hand pump of spray, and I would come up and I'd have like 3 locations. And this is the way you work with people.
This shit.
And I'd come up and I'd be like, hey, I have an appointment. I'm here to spray for whatever, roaches or beetles or whatever. And the first location, they'd be like, no, we don't have you on record. Who do you work with? And I'd be like, oh, I work for this company. They're like, no, we don't contract with you. We contract with so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I must be at the wrong place. I leave. I go to the second location. Hey, I'm a contractor of so-and-so. I know you guys have bug problems because that's your other location. And now now people have just given me information, and people are the weakest link. So that's just an example, as we talked about with the potential compromise of the copy of the images. Same thing. Someone gave them access to the systems. Anyways, next question. I like this question. This is interesting. I could talk about this all day, social engineering, but so this one is asking a very interesting question. So they say, where does Elon and Starlink fit into potential fraud? We don't talk about this a lot. There's probably not a lot I can say about this, but what I will highlight, this is kind of in the realm of speculation, right? There's no solid evidence to suggest Elon or Starlink is directly involved in our elections, but I will highlight some data points. So here's a few data points, as I said. One second. And so these data points are all across North Carolina, I do believe, and we're making a list, the counties. But across North Carolina, I think Starlink was used to upload results So Starlink was connected to the networks of some of these counties' board of election systems. But as I said, there's no evidence yet that Starlink or Elon Musk was directly involved in anything with the systems, with the machines, besides a few quotes. But I will highlight as well, as we said, the #1 brand in the US for tabulation systems. A lot of their machines have cellular modems in them. Their voting servers are accessible by the internet. So if you were in some way able to compromise or use cellular connections, you could mess with those systems as well. So I don't know anything about Starlink in that regard. As I said, we've not seen anything, no data yet. But I will highlight that there is a avenue with some of the systems. And Starlink was used well throughout the US during the 2024 presidential election. Now, if there were issues, this would be something that you would find during discovery, during investigations.
It's just a whole fucking mess.
I got a few more minutes here.
Woke Mike wants to know, why does Donald Trump smell so bad? And I
don't know.
He's gonna bust my balls. Why are you gonna break my balls? I mean, gotta change its pins. That's all there is to it. Next question. Can I ask him about the Tina Peters? You know what? No. Why don't you ask him, Kevin Woolridge?
It's funny because I know exactly what they're talking about.
Okay.
So Tina Peters, I believe was, let me double check, but this has actually come up recently. Was it Mesa County, Colorado? Let's double check here. I think this was back in, I don't know if it was, let me find the exact dates, but I'll give you an overview as I look here. Mesa County, Colorado has come up a few times. I think places in Colorado have come up because, let's see, there was apparently a 2021 voting systems breach. I think Tina Peters may have aided a pro-Trump operative in accessing and copying Dominion voting machines as well. And so that was an issue. I think she was convicted and sentenced in 24, Mesa County. Yep. So they did find her guilty on 7 counts. So she apparently did help compromise some of the systems. And what's interesting now is we are finding just recently in some of our work, Tina Peters does show up in some documentation in Mesa County, Colorado. She does talk about some of the machines, and she does bring up some of the same concerns we have today. And I find that's very interesting that she had some of the same concerns. They had some reports talking about some of the systems they use and potential vulnerabilities and compromises. But then she went on to help compromise those machines and, was actually criminally charged for it. So she does talk about compromises and vulnerabilities of the machines, I think Dominion. So it's a very weird case. As I said, it's kind of one of those weird ones. What's that?
Almost like free and fair elections are a bipartisan issue.
Yeah. And I think that's an excellent point is we don't say this enough, but we don't, the ETA doesn't, we're nonpartisan. We don't care about politics, right? I don't care what party you vote for. I don't care what shirt you wear, what color hat. I care about making sure that your freaking vote was counted right the first time around, and that's a byproduct of maybe a little bit of my military stuff. Cause I'm like, fuck it. Constitution's pretty clear on that. And it doesn't have to be a politics issue. Making sure our elections are run right helps everyone, right? Why would you not want, unless you're up to no good, why would you not want our elections to be run right the first time around?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Next one is from Apex Eater, who coincidentally is not wearing a shirt, since you just mentioned that. Will you address Tim? Okay, first of all, he's going to have to change his name over at Bulwark directly. I don't know what this is in reference to, but I'm presuming it has something to do with, because he's trying to frame the analysis as the work of kooks, and you should clear it up. So,
yeah, I think this just goes into the same things where we've had a little bit of coverage, not specifically us, but like the concerns about the 24 election as a whole. And the first response is always to label people as blue and on or crazy or MAGA 2.0 or whatever they want to say, right? They want to say, hey, it's Stop the Steal 2.0. And I think, as we talked about before, is what is the difference this time around? Well, you've got data, you've got facts. This is grassroots. It's coming from people. It's coming from statisticians and experts who are looking at the facts. It's not coming from the top down, right? No one came out, the day after the election and said, "Hey, the Democrats lost the election; it was rigged." No one's saying that from the top down. In fact, we're saying, "Hey, we want to check, we want to look." So, I think for those people who, if it's the bulwark, if it's whatever, and they're saying we're cooks and we're crazy, look at the data. The data speaks for itself. Put up the graphs. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the lawsuit in New York. Let's talk about these findings. Let's talk about the work of Dr. Walter Mebane, because at the end of the day, the numbers don't lie. And, we're not asking for a lot.
I'm not going to attempt to pronounce the first name there because I will screw it up and I don't want to insult
Clarice,
anybody. I will
Clarice.
say, if that's your real profile picture, hey girl, hey. Will the ballots for the House and Senate races also be included in the recount?
I think they're referencing if there's recounts in New York or not. I believe you can recount the entire ballot. You can look at every race on the ballot. So presidential, Senate, all the way down. Some counties have like unique things to the county or to the state. Yeah, you would want to look at all of them. I am concerned, as we said before, that although the presidential race is what we talk about a lot, I am concerned the down ballot races, the Senate and House races, and some of the state government races could be on the chopping block. If that's the case, you're in muddy waters there, and it's worth looking at. It's worth investigating.
Can we use the MyPillow data?
It's funny they say that. We did look a little bit at some of the data that was highlighted back in 2020, 2021. A lot of the data that we did see, we couldn't get they didn't have it publicly available. Like there wasn't any downloads. It was mostly talking heads talking about it, kind of like what I do. But as I said, we put our data up on our website and our dashboard, and you can go download it for yourself. I will highlight all of the data that we've made public has been from the counties themselves. Like you can go look at Rockland County, New York. You can go and download their voting data from their website and do the same analysis we do, and we're highlighting. So I think that's the big difference, is at the end of the day, we can give you the receipts and you can do it yourself.
I highlighted this one to address it because I do owe a couple people an apology. Right after the election, I kind of fell in with the whole, well, we've been, saying it's good to go for the past 4 years. And I on rare occasion said some shit about Blue Anon, conspiracy theory, crackpot stuff. And when you were first on the show, I said something to the effect of, I hate being in the position where all the things that I used to make fun of, I am now like painfully aware of the irony that we now look like those people.
Well, I think what's important here is think of it from this perspective. Let's do some hypotheticals, right? Let's say hypothetically you cheated or you tried to cheat an election and you lost. And then for the next 4 years, you complained about it, right? You complained about cheating. You complained about, the election being stolen from you, but you may have actually cheated, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to change the outcome. And then, I think a good analogy is it's the boy who cried wolf, right? It's projection. And that's the concern we're having now, is now we're having to overcome, such a taboo, such a hurdle of, hey, you're all freaking crazy because, our elections are being messed with.
Yeah.
But I mean, here we are. I think really the only way to address it is let's be reasonable. Let's look at the data. We're not asking for a lot. And
it's okay for people to say, you know what, I was wrong.
It's okay.
From a place of whatever ignorance I'm involving or whatever,
No, I think that's why some people don't understand science, because science is literally just, hey, this is the facts we have today. We could get more data tomorrow and it could change something, right? And you got to be willing to be like, hey, I was wrong, or hey, I've got new stuff. And that's just being a part of being a person. You get stuff wrong. It's okay. But, here we are.
Can we get a copy of the grass, please? I know you mentioned on the website, electiontruthalliance.org. Ding, ding.
Yeah, what
you
I'll
had some of
do,
the data.
what I can do is I can have this PowerPoint. Let me, I need to send this PowerPoint back to the editors so that they can fix some of my mistakes, as is, how it always goes. Then we can throw it up on our website and we can make it a little thing, or I can send it back to you guys, and, you can link it in the chat, link it in the Discord, or in the description of the video if you guys want to look at stuff more. But yeah.
Oh, I would be happy to host that on our Discord server. Just post it up as a system announcement periodically.
Yeah, a little reference. All right, I do have to step away here in about 5 minutes or so. So anything else you want to wrap, and then
let's get this last question in here. There's probably a couple more that I'm going to miss, and I'm sorry in advance.
Yeah. No, this is a good question. It's a good question. So they're asking, if we prove election fraud, what's next, right? Class action lawsuits. So I've spoken to some constitutional lawyers, and I think I mentioned this before. Excuse me. I think I mentioned this before, and really what it's going to take is, let's say we prove election fraud tomorrow, right? Let's say we prove that the machines are changing votes tomorrow, and that reinforces our argument of, hey, if it's happening here, it's happening everywhere these machines are used. The outcome of the election is now different than what we're being told. Then, yeah, what we're looking at is, I would say we're going to be taking that to federal court. It would be, the first step is getting the governors on board, getting the attorney generals on board, because they're responsible for their states and their elections. So you can get a handful of some of these states' attorney generals to jump in and help pursue a federal lawsuit. And then, yeah, I don't even know at that point what that would even become or look like. But I know it would be in the news. I know it would be a big deal. It would be the first time something like this has really been public. And then we go from there. And I think the thing is, people want to be afraid. I don't think I think you're going to have to face this. If this is real, let's face it. Let's get it out there. Let's get it over with. And then we can deal with it in the aftermath that follows, right? There's no point in, burying our heads in the sand. Let's figure it out now. Let's get these audits. Hey, if the paper says the results are the results, then so be it, right? Elections are free and fair. But if not, we got a serious problem, and it's not going to get better with time. It's not going to get better with the midterms. It's not going to get better with the next presidential election. This is a fight you got to fight today, and that's what we're doing. All right.
That is going to be our time for today. Nathan has to go, and I am also by myself, so nobody wants to fucking listen to me talk.
It's funny you say that, because I could sit there for 30 minutes and talk about a graph on a video. But yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm sure we'll have more opportunities. We did a little bit of call to action, data action stuff last time around. Mm-hmm. We may look at something more like that in the future, maybe even some local events. As I said, Pennsylvania is really, a focus right now, but we'll see.
Yeah, send me an email, since you've got my my Sons of Liberty email. Send me an email and let me know what you need us to do, and I will absolutely make it a point to get people galvanized to a call to action.
I appreciate it. Yep, and we're not far off from July 4th, so I hope people are staying safe, celebrating our country. And I think that's the fun thing for me is, as we kind of close this out, I do this not because I want to bring question to our elections. I do this because I care. I'm here because I care. As we talked about before, I took an oath to protect the American people, but the Constitution, not once, but twice. I did it twice. It sucked for a little bit there. That's why I did it the second time around. I was like, maybe being an officer was better. But it matters to me. And so I do this not because I want to really cause chaos. I do this because I want answers. I want to make sure our people are being taken care of at the end of the day. That's what matters.
You want to give them a safety brief in advance?
Yeah.
How long we get?
Here's your safety brief. Do not hold fireworks in your hand when you light them. Don't do that shit.
It's accepted.
If you've ever had friends who are emergency responders, I had so many firefighters and so many EMS, and I had a local
Or a wife
friend.
who's an emergency responder.
Yeah. And so I'm sure they're going to tell you about people who held on the fireworks and now they're missing fingers. It's not fun. So don't do that. Anyways, I'm sidetracked. But yeah, thanks so much for having me. And we'll have hopefully some more of this. Who knows what tomorrow will bring, right? We might have some really cool stuff next time around too.
Every day waking up is just like, what fresh hell?
Yep.
But I noticed my view count is dropping since we said we were going to end things before everybody fucks off to La La Land. I just want to tell everybody I am working currently. I'm in talks with getting Representative Ro Khanna from California's 17th Congressional District on our live stream. Now I'm going to say a thing, and I need everybody to just tell that bitch to be cool. I'm also working on getting Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks on the live stream. I know. Just hold your wish and let me do my thing. You just fucking trust Big Sarge there. I'm also still working on getting Jolly Good Ginger. So that's going to be our upcoming guests for the foreseeable future. A lot of people have noticed that we've started, there's been an increase of young progressive candidates on the show. Aiden Swallow, who's in the chat right now, one of them, Deja Fox, Bernard Taylor, Kat Abugzala, Malcolm Rishi. I'll give you an honorable mention because even though you're older than me, hashtag not sorry. And there's good reason for that. In a lot of our live streams and some of the Big Sarge videos, I've said that there are a lot of establishment Dems who are basically dinos or Democrats in name only. As my friend Amanda said, non-practicing Democrats, which is a term that I think I'm going to co-opt from once or twice. If our politicians aren't going to wake the hell up, then it's time for a change, regardless of whether they're Republican or Democrat. It's already been time for a change. We've been saying for the last couple of years, time to phase out a lot of these old white guys, of which I am one. And now is the time. If these people aren't out there in the streets fighting tooth and nail for your right to party, then get them out of office. So run for office. We need a new generation of leaders who are the voices of democracy, freedom, social justice, the rule of law. A new generation that puts the we back in we the people. So if you don't already know, I want to introduce you to a website called runforsomething.net. I'm going to post that up in the chat real fast.
All right, I got to drop here, sir. I appreciate it. I'll let you close out. Thanks so much. And I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for having me. And
thank you. Thank you for being on.
Have a good one.
Again. Runforsomething.net. It's a website that has a lot of tools and training and advice to get you where you need to be, to get you the help. If you want to run for office, walk you through the steps of getting on ballots. And I'm going to close out with this. I'm going to give you a piece of advice that my grandfather gave me decades ago. And that advice is that nobody ever won a race by standing still. Be the change that you want to see in the world. You remember that shit? Now is your chance. Run for office. For the House of Representatives, I think you got to be like, 23, 25 years old. So if Deja Fox can do it, working at gas stations, which is 100% respectable, it's not a dig, then everybody else can do it too. No, I'm not running for office. I got way too much porn work in my background. Sorry. That's my time for today. Thank you, everybody, for staying dialed in. And again, thanks for Nathan. Thank you to Nathan for being on the stream. Y'all be safe. Have a good weekend. And that's my time. 2 claps and a Rick. Woo!